you noticed that typically news is not good news? News is typically something terrible happened, something bad's going to happen, it was a disaster, lots of people were hurt, etc. News typically does not say, well, do you know what, nothing much happened, weather was pretty average, people got on with their lives, and it's pretty boring actually. So news is always, to a large degree, quite threatening in many areas and many respects. Okay, the thing is, we like that. Human beings, we like dramatic news in a sense, because our brains focus very well on things which are really kind of massively, oh my gosh, you know, they're really anxiety provoking or catastrophic, and we kind of quite like the sort of the buzz of that. The problem is that we can get hooked on it. Now here's a question. Where do you think you spend most of your time? You have three options: the past, the present, or the future. Where do you think you spend most of your time? And what do you think the consequence is of where you spend your time? So let's examine it this way. If you spend your time in the past, what is it that you're likely to be doing, and what is the likely consequence of that? Well, given that you're watching my video, and I'm a psychologist, and you know we're doing things about GAD, etc. If you spend the time in the past, you're likely to be ruminating or overthinking. You're likely to be going back over what you perceive as future faults, as past faults and failings, of things that you did wrong, of things that you could have done better, of mistakes that you potentially made, even though at the time they didn't feel like mistakes. So if you put a lot of your time in the past and you use that negative bias, we might call it a negative problem orientation, but you know, oh yeah, it didn't go very well, it could have been better, I wish I'd done something different, you know, it was horrible, now that I think about it, you know, it was a stupid thing to do. Right. If you spend your time in that area, you are going to tend towards having cognitions and thoughts and experiences and emotions consistent with depression. Now, suppose you spend your time in the future. What do you think that's likely to create for you? Well, of course, the future hasn't happened, and so we're very prone to doing, yeah, but what if it does happen? What if the plane does crash? What if I do get cancer? What if everybody dies? What if my children get locked up for drug use? You know, what if? What if? What if? What if? The future gives us a real good opportunity to use our massive human ability to generate fantasy, to create catastrophic news stories about the future that actually never happen. It's really quite rare for a what if catastrophic anxiety provoking thought to come to pass. Yeah, but what if the plane crashes? Very unlikely that the plane will crash. Okay, now, do you spend much time in the present? I'm going to suggest no. Now, bear with me on this one. If you spend time in the past, your brain is basically rehashing old memories. If you spend time in the future, I'll just put this in here. That's likely to be anxiety provoking. If you spend time in the future, you're likely to be generating what ifs. You're likely to be far more in your head, in a sense, and far more generating catastrophic scenarios. But actually, let me ask you this question. In the present, right now in this moment, do you have a problem? Right now, in this moment, do you have a problem? Now, typically people go, no, I'm not supposed to do, no, not really, no, don't have a problem, no. Right, so where are your problems located? Your problems are located either in the past or in the future. But where do you live? You live in the present. So this is a really important point, right? Where you put your attention determines the kind of experiences that you have. If you struggle with anxiety, you're living way more in the future than is good for you, and in fact useful or productive, right? You're basically living in a movie. But it's not a good movie, right? It's a horror movie. It's a disaster movie. And if you're living in the past, you're basically living in a kind of a miserable kind of noir, let's call it a Swedish or Ingmar Bergman noir kind of film, which is a bit boring and bleak and a bit miserable. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to live more in the present. Now I hope that makes sense to you, because it is a step in the right direction, right? Now, typically when we talk about anxiety, anxiety is the emotion of threat. Okay, so anxiety is typically, you're feeling it in your body. It feels uncomfortable. I know what anxiety feels like. I've had anxiety before. It feels uncomfortable, but it's located in your body. Now, if you recollect that we also have thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and sensations, if your body's feeling anxious, your brain is going to try and figure out why you're anxious. And that brings us to the thinking part of anxiety, which is worry. Now, when we spend time in the future, we're creating catastrophic scenarios about things which will never happen. We bring that emotion that we feel, we bring that emotion that we imagine we would feel in the present, we bring it into, we bring that emotion that we imagine we would feel in the future into the present. And in the present, we feel as if the plane crashed. To a degree. We feel as if something terrible did happen, as if someone did die. We feel that right now. We feel that distress right now in the present. But actually it hasn't happened in the present. So we've got to start bringing awareness to this idea that we have to wake ourselves up. Instead of being asleep and just allowing our brain to do what it habitually does, because your brain will basically do what it has been doing, we've got to wake ourselves up and say, hang on, no, I'm going to remain in the present. And that brings us to this strategy of having a zero tolerance for worry. I want us to develop the idea that worrying is completely useless, and therefore we're going to have a zero tolerance for worry. Now, in the next one or two videos that you get, you're going to be provided with a tool which enables you to stop worry and to move your mind away from the future and into the present. So that will be, the next video will be your practice exercise.